Okay, so welcome to How the Best Win 2022, the third and final installment of what's been a really popular 2022 Strategic Proposals Spring webinar series. My name's John Williams. I'm the UK Managing Director of SP, and I'm joined by my colleague Graham Ablett, another of our board of directors, and as of last week, one of the latest APMP fellows, for which our congratulations. We're both presenting against the background of thunder and lightning outside our respective homes, so anything could happen. And I'm presenting with a really annoying cough, which I have a nasty feeling might be COVID. So again, anything could happen. What can you look forward to in this session? Well, we're going to give you some data-driven answers to the following questions and more. Which country in the world leads the way in bidding terms? What are the real struggles facing too many bid and proposal teams? And what do the most successful teams do that really make a difference? Which market sector has the most mature proposal capabilities? And is there a correlation between your proposal capabilities and your win rate? I'll give you a clue. There is, overwhelmingly. If at any point in the session you've got questions, please log them in the meeting chat. We'll monitor that and we'll come to those at the end of the session. And we'll answer any that we can't take during the call on the Strategic Proposals LinkedIn page afterwards. We're also recording the session for people to watch at a later date, and we will be producing a white paper version of this within a matter of a few weeks. Before we dive in, a little history and context. Back in the 1990s, B.J. Lowney, who founded Strategic Proposals across in the US, created one of the world's first formal bid and proposal benchmarking models. In early 2002, once we'd opened our doors for Strategic Proposals UK, we added more depth and detail to the model. It enables us to objectively assess an organization's proposal capabilities against 42 criteria. The benchmarking process involves reviews of recent submissions, interviews with stakeholders and clients, and lots of data gathering. And we've used it to design and build hugely successful bid centers for more than 100 organizations around the world. When we planned how to celebrate Strategic Proposals' 30th anniversary as an organization back in 2017, we decided it was time to democratize benchmarking in our profession. Take the essence of our benchmarking model, distill it down into 100 questions, put it online free, and give everybody who completes it a bespoke report with recommendations. So the proposal benchmarker was launched in spring 2017. In 2018, we published a white paper with the early results, and we presented that, How the Best Win, at APMP's Bid and Proposal Con in San Diego that summer. And since then, we've continued to refine the question set. We've updated the question set twice to ensure that it continues to provide a stretch target for even the most successful tools. This session today, How the Best Win 2022, represents the first major published update to that initial research. As a result, what we're sharing is one of the most in-depth real-time profiles of bidding organizations' capabilities that exists in the world today.
Cool, thanks, John. Well, let's have a look at who has joined the party. The analysis that we're going to present to you draws on benchmarking data from a little over 1,000 organizations from 32 countries, from Portugal to Peru to the Philippines. So, as with any survey in our world, we've seen an amazing number of different job titles completing the benchmarker. Amongst those who've completed the assessment, 365 in total, by the way, that's one for every day of the year. The most common one, unsurprisingly, bid manager, but our very favorite, however, was master of inspiration. In terms of roles, we had people filling it in, 26% of which held senior bid or proposal roles, heads of or directors of bidding. 40% were in other bid or proposal roles. And the final 34% were from other disciplines, a mix between salespeople, sales leaders, heads of marketing, and a few C-suite executives in there. Geographically, about 70% of the responses come from the UK or the US, which maybe is perhaps a reflection on the history of the proposal profession, maybe partly because the benchmarker is in English. So there's maybe a slight skew in the data that we're presenting, which we need to just consider and keep in the back of our minds as we look through this. Disraeli, of course, said there are lies, damned lies, and statistics. So we have to ask ourselves, is this data in our model an absolute perfect cross-section of the world of bidding? No, it's not. But with about 100,000 data points and a lot of consistency as we dice the data in lots of different ways, we're really confident that what we're finding and presenting to you is pretty robust. And look, if you've got better data, we'd love to compare ours to yours. The very point here is about giving back, sharing knowledge, and advancing our fantastic profession. Let's move on. Let's start by looking at some of the good stuff. Where do organizations think they perform consistently well when it comes to their bid and proposal capabilities? I'm going to show you the top 10 capabilities based on organizations' responses to the benchmarker. Okay, so here's the top 10. Coming in at number 10, we run an effective kickoff workshop for every bid to connect, brief, and motivate team members. Number 9, staff in the proposal support function are viewed within their business as experienced and credible professionals. Number 8, our pitches no longer feel like death by PowerPoint, and we'd hope so, right? Because it's now 2022, not 2012. In at number 7, we have a set of contemporary, easy to tailor, standard proposal and pitch templates that are used for smaller or less strategic deals. Now, there's a sense here that we're enabling sales colleagues to self-serve for maybe smaller, less strategic opportunities. That really seems to be bedding in with this one. So that's good. Number 6, our proposals are always well structured, and they've got a logical flow to them and are easy to navigate for the evaluators. In at number 5, senior executives are regularly involved, especially on major proposal efforts. I'm just smiling here because we've probably all experienced where senior execs have got involved and been more of a hindrance than a help, right? But in at number 5, good that senior execs are seen as getting involved regularly. Number 4, whenever we're not restricted by those annoying, prescriptive customer requirements, we always use graphics and images to help us to tell our story. Our challenge from maybe an SP perspective might be how good they actually are, but that's not what we're looking at the moment. In at number 3, we're great at managing virtual proposal teams when it's simply not possible to bring contributors together as you'd like. And well, you'd expect this to be high up and people being good at this after the last couple of years, right? In at number 2, nearly there to number 1, but in at number 2, the story and content of our pitch always closely aligns to the written proposal. This is a really good one because there used to be a bigger disconnect here, and this is good that pitches and proposals are really being seen as a strength in their alignment. But number 1, taking the number 1 spot for the highest ranking capability is that all proposal content is approved before it's issued. It's a governance one. That ensures that the deal would result in good, profitable business for us if we won. In other words, we're all scared of the chief financial officer, right? So you know what? If you're doing that stuff there, some of this stuff well, then that is really great. But is it really something to write home about? Because lots and lots of people out there, your competitors, are also doing them really well. We've just seen that. And if there are things on this list that you are not doing now, then perhaps you're at risk of slipping to the back of the pack a little bit. So what we really have here on this list, on the screen in front of you, is the baseline for bidding in 2022.
That's the stuff people are doing well. What's giving proposal and pitch experts out there the biggest headaches? 80% of the questions that get the lowest overall average scores in the data fall into just 4 categories. So let's explore those. First up, weak management of pre-written content. I deployed my first library of pre-written content 20 years or so ago. This isn't a new thing, yet it's an area with which too many organizations still struggle. Too few have explored the benefits of professional content management software. Too few have the right resource in place to manage their content library effectively. And it's too rare for content in their libraries to be owned by the relevant subject matter experts in the business, accountable for keeping it up to date. The second area, poorly trained teams. We've long observed that all those involved in proposal development should be trained in the necessary skills. But this seems still to be an area that's woefully overlooked. Very few organizations have thought about bid and proposal training needs in a structured way. Very few of those involved in bid presentations receive training before they stand up and pitch to clients. And still too few organizations have supported their staff to gain the appropriate level of APMP certification for their role. The third common area that's emerging as an area of weakness is a lack of bid competitive intelligence. We write a proposal trying to convince the evaluators, why us? Why not them? And yet far too few of us know enough about them. Very few organizations have a robust process for managing competitive intelligence that they use then to provide insights when they're working on their strategy, their solution, their storyboards, their content. And the fourth consistent area of weakness, a reactive approach. We asked people responding, do you have clear visibility of all the major new business that will require a written proposal over the coming 12 months? People don't. We ask whether on the majority of recent bids, you'd influence clients' requirements and decision-making in your favor, and you hadn't. We asked whether you steal a march on the competition by submitting proactive proposals and pitches without waiting to be sent an RFP. Very rarely. The bid profession is too often still reactive, simply spending almost all of our time responding, working on RFP responses one after the other. As a result, we too often in the data see a sense of frustration as people know they could have submitted a better proposal were it not for the resource constraints that impeded them. And that feels wrong, given that bidding should be the growth engine, the job protection and job creation engine for so many firms. So the data would suggest that if you're struggling with those key issues, you're not alone. But also know from the data that there are organizations who've tackled them, addressed them, seen advantage come from them, and take confidence for that, from the fact that there are solutions to hand. Let's also find some good news. What are the areas in which we're seeing things get better? Where are we looking and seeing improvements in the data from the first 3 years the model was there, the proposal benchmark of 2017, 18, 19, to 2020, 21, 22? And have we seen things where there's been a shift? Well, the answer, yeah, there have been 5 major areas of change. Although, as I've just mentioned, the score is woefully low, far more companies are building processes around renewal proposals, working out how they can get a document in front of the customer to try and avoid getting onto the slippery slope of the competitive tender if they're the incumbent. The second, the availability of dedicated collaborative space. Now, it's interesting to reflect that the most recent couple of years have been during the pandemic. So I guess the answer to this is there's probably more space available if we do go into the office because there are fewer colleagues involved. That might be out of our control. But, we'd argue that one of the great opportunities for proposal teams right now is to work out how to optimize the blend between remote working and face-to-face activity. Third of 5 key areas, there's far greater continuity, as Graham said, between the proposal and pitch. We've seen a real shift here, both in terms of team membership and the style and content of the collateral. That includes proposal professionals getting more involved more regularly in the presentation stage, whereas up to a few years ago, we submitted the proposal, the bid folks ran away, and perhaps the salespeople did too much of this themselves. Although it's still too low, there's more learning from experience going on. There are more objective learning reviews taking place. There are more client audits. And more teams are spending time comparing what actually happened when they came to deliver to what had been said in the bid. And the final one of things we've seen a big shift in the last couple of years, and this was a very, very, very big increase. It was in response to the question that asks whether the head of your bid and proposal function is a senior executive who commands respect across the organization. Perhaps organizations are beginning to appreciate the value that real leaders bring in this area and appointing more senior people with more clout to run our functions.
Thanks, John. So that was some of the pain points and the areas where there's some change and some improvement for you to ponder. Now, a couple more perspectives from me to start with. Sectors. We looked at which sectors were performing best. So who on the webinar thinks that their sector is the very best at doing proposals? Well, we'll share that with you in just 1 second. The answer is, though, well, there's actually very, very little, surprisingly little difference from sector to sector. Still, sit back. We all love a league table, don't we? So let's look here at the top performers in decreasing order from the sectors where we had a statistically significant number of responses. So seventh place, we had our friends in the professional services sector. Just beating them, business administration and support. Then at number 5, construction. 4, we had ICT, IT and communications. 3, leaping up the table, actually from previous analysis, the transport sector. Number 2, property, real estate, often seen as a high performing sector, as we've seen in the past. And finally, number 1, the health sector. So congratulations to those in that sector. You're clearly doing something right. One curious finding, though, just looking at that list, who do you think's missing? Those of you who know the history of the bidding profession will know that in APMP's early days, it was pretty much dominated by the defence industry. But look, guess which sectors ranked bottom of our list? Yes, defence. Now, of course, procurement and defence is often pretty regimented, right? But there's probably something here, perhaps, for defence contractors out there to ponder a potential to embrace new ways of working, maybe breaking out of that defence echo chamber and learning from other sectors, as the profession has from them in the past. So that's the sector perspective. Next lens we want to look through is geography. We've created the World Series of Bids and Proposals. So if you're on this webinar, chances are you work in bidding, right? You wouldn't be a competitive type, right? Okay, well, maybe just a tad competitive. So which country do you think lifts the trophy for the highest average capability score? Let's find out. We've only done this, by the way, for the 12 or so countries with the most respondents. Otherwise, there's just not enough volume. So I'm sorry to say, if you're the one person in Colombia who's bidding brilliantly, according to their results, we would love to meet you. But the sample size just isn't big enough for it to count in these results. So in 6th place, without further ado, South Africa. Perhaps a testament there to the wonderful APMP chapter that's out in South Africa, and perhaps to the work of Enfold, our fabulous business partners who are doing great stuff out there. 5th place, the USA. Interesting. That's where the APMP was founded, but maybe, anecdotally, actually, we've shared for a while that we're not sure that the profession there is advancing maybe as quickly as it has in other countries around the world. Maybe that's why it's in 5th. 4th place, with actually a reasonable jump in scores from 5th. Yep, that's those of us over here in the UK. Right, we're getting up to the medal positions here. Tension's mounting. In 3rd position, it's our great friends in Australia. And I know Nigel Dennis from our partner BidRight Down Under will not let me and John live this down, just like he doesn't whenever the Aussies thrashes in the cricket, which is all too often. In 2nd position, Canada. Interesting, we thought, to see quite a divide across the big North American border there. But now the big one, the winners, the strongest country in bidding. Drum roll, please. it's the Netherlands. So congratulations, Netherlands. I think I'm probably going to have to buy a bottle of champagne for our colleagues in Strategic Proposals Netherlands, Richard Bels and Janneke Oriens, who really have done some amazing stuff to help shape and advance the profession over there. There we go.
So does all this stuff matter? Underpinning our benchmarking methodology since the very outset has been a categorization of proposal support functions into 4 main levels of maturity. There's the ad hoc approach. Okay, those are the organizations who score less than 40% in the assessment, where proposal development really is slightly chaotic. In many instances, it's still led by the salesperson who's unlucky enough to receive the RFP and has to pull a response together herself or himself, perhaps without any professional bid support whatsoever. And about 31% of the people responding to this survey still fall into that camp. Then the folks who score between 41 and 59% in the middle of the ranking on their self-assessments. That's what we term tactical. There are some bid folks around. Their job is to make life easier for the salespeople by running the process, getting a complete and compliant document out of the door on time. But it's still perhaps a case that the salesperson passes them the ITT and they pass the completed document back. The focus is really on efficiency rather than the quality of the document. They're often chasing everything that moves. They're very often under-resourced. And that accounts for 47%, just under half of the organizations who've completed the proposal benchmarker in the last 2 years. Then you get the strategic approach. They're the folks who score between 60 and 74%. They've built the right approach to bidding with great people, a strong process, and a focus on producing great output. But you know, sometimes it still feels like a struggle, like pushing that stone up the hill against the odds to get people to truly collaborate with some of the things that they know to be best practice. And about 17% of organizations fall into that strategic camp. And then at the top of the tree, what we term strategic plus. They score 75% or more in the assessment. The importance of proposals, of bidding, is understood from the very top of the organization downwards, understood as the growth engine for the company. And in the past 2 years, the number of organizations hitting this top tier has doubled. Only a small amount, because it was a low starting point, to a little over 6% of people completing their self-assessment with the proposal benchmarker. But still, doubled. So how does maturity correlate to win rate? By design, in the proposal benchmarker, we deliberately don't explicitly ask people to share their win rate when it comes to feeding in their self-assessment to the forms. There are simply too many different ways of calculating it to get an apples for apples comparison. Of course, client decisions are taken on more than just the written proposal and pitch alone. And we're not sure that folks would actually disclose something so commercially sensitive. So we built in some questions that together let us mimic win rate. For example, do you win more bids than you lose? Do you win a higher proportion of bids than would be expected given your market position? And we're able to add the response to those questions together to get what we call a win score. And we can plot the average win score for each of the 4 levels of maturity. So what do you think happens? As people get better at proposals, do you think their win rate or win score goes down? Do you think there's no correlation? Do you think it goes up? Or are you beyond caring at this point of the webinar? And guess what we see? Here's the output for the first 3 years data, 2017 to 2019. It is pretty much a straight line. That as organizations move their scores up and move up categories, the average win score for organizations in each of those camps goes up in direct correlation. Here's what the data looks like for the last couple of years. Pretty flat for the first 3 camps. What we're seeing is the strategic plus, the very top tier, those 6% of organizations who really have this in the DNA of their business, getting even more competitive advantage. The best are getting better, they're pulling still further ahead. You know, the key conclusion from this, as we would all know anecdotally from the work we do in our profession, is that improved capabilities are going to help you to win more business. It's just this is now backed up by 100,000 data points in our model.
Thanks, John. So the final piece of analysis, by questioning the benchmark, or in effect by capability, we took the top 10% of organizations by the win score, and we compared those to the answers from the bottom 25%. We looked for areas where they were statistically the biggest difference, to try and pinpoint where those top performers were really outperforming the masses. And we got 12 key areas that I'm going to share with you now. Check for yourself how you get on against the high-flying organizations that score high in these areas. These most successful organizations, it's far more likely that they have a more robust bid and no bid process that ensures that they allocate the right resources to the right deals based on best practice criteria, like, is it real? Do we want it? Can we win it? Can we do it? And they treat deals as being qualified out until they're qualified in. Second thing is that they're proactive. They don't merely work from a production line of RFPs. They have a clear, defined approach to pre-proposal planning, to influencing the client's requirements and criteria, decision criteria, on the majority of deals that they work on. They have a clear, structured process for renewal processes as well, proposals as well, rather than sitting back on that slippery slope that John mentioned before of the competitive rebid. And they're regularly winning business via proactive proposals, sort of getting ahead of the game without waiting for that RFP to land. Number 3 would be they're real storytellers, clearly identifying their proposal strategy and win themes, and then making sure everyone contributing content understands those. They'll be drafting the executive summary early, so everyone writing content understands that bigger picture. And the win themes, therefore, will cascade through the whole proposal. The best are passionate about storyboarding or other forms of content planning, so before content contributors start to draft content. They also ensure that all those involved in proposal development have been trained recently in the necessary skills, with the proper analysis of their training needs. And that includes specific training for everyone involved in pitching to clients, not just proposals. Oh, and by the way, their staff tend to all be APMP certified as well. The best are also stronger at bid competitive intelligence than most, albeit we strongly sense not as good as it really could be. But that's one of the big differences. Number 7, their subject matter experts own the content that's in their pre-written content library. 8 is that they have the best have skilled trainers, a team, of trained expert peer reviewers. As we've said for a long time, being a reviewer should be a real badge of honor with an organization, helping increase evaluation scores by 10 or 20%. The 9th thing is that they run independently facilitated learning reviews internally, win or lose, with robust client debriefs as well. For them, lessons learned drives real change in their organization with ownership from senior management. Number 10 would be that the best measure the success of their proposal support function using a clear balanced scorecard that reflects win rates, internal and external feedback, proposal quality audit scores, and other clearly defined criteria. Number 11, the biggest difference was that the best teams have a clear capacity plan in place, reflecting the resources and skills needed to support the up-and-coming deals in the sales pipeline, along with, by the way, a level of support that matches the strategic importance of the deal. And the last biggest difference between the top performers and those fitting into the bottom of the benchmark, they have a track record of successfully investing in their proposal function. There's a clear and well understood return on investment delivered by the proposal support function. And as a result, it's more likely that the proposal development process is just part of the DNA of the business. and they're way more confident of success on all of the must-win deals in their pipeline. All of this stuff is eminently achievable. So if you're not ticking these boxes right now, perhaps this chart, these 12 points, become a blueprint for your organization's future success. Maybe they become an agenda for a conversation as soon as possible with the most senior execs in your organization.
Let's take a little bit of a look at the future of benchmarking. Recently, we spent some time consulting with a number of the most senior leaders in the bid and proposal profession to capture their ideas on how the most successful teams will operate in the coming years. And we'll fold those views into the next release of the proposal benchmarker this summer to make sure that it continues to be that stretch target. And as a result of some of that consultation and our own thinking on it, here's some of the areas we'll start to assess that aren't in the model at the moment. People see a real trend around the quality of design in the market. Real focus, more focus on flexible working and a better work-life balance, perhaps as we emerge from the pandemic with different expectations. Our friends in the world of procurement are not giving us longer to reply. So how do we become even more nimble at producing brilliant proposals and pitches when the response times are likely to tighten? We've had a lot of discussion through our professional body, APMP, and other sources around capture management. Graham is one of our directors who leads our capture certification training. We see the link between not only the proposal and the pre-proposal planning, but into the earlier stages of influencing and positioning the capture planning as becoming even more important. Greater scrutiny up front. We are spending our organization's resources on bidding. We believe, talking to our leaders we've surveyed, there'll be greater scrutiny up front on should we be chasing these deals and spending money on them. That ties into expecting to see even more senior management buy-in than we have at the moment, and we've seen a trend to that, starting to happen more. Digital delivery. The world has gone digital. When did you last send a printed version of a bid in? Sending electronic digital versions in, then the world's gone landscape. Screens are landscape. What does all that mean? How do we embrace things like animation, things like video that we're starting to see more and more of? And how does this tie into the broader picture of sales enablement and automation? So all of those things will be things that we will capture as emerging directions, trends, things that the most successful organizations are wrestling with, that we will build into the model to make it that continuing stretch target. And of course, if you want to go and assess yourselves in the model, you can do it. It's very easy. Just go to proposalbenchmarker.com, and that will help you test your capabilities, come up with your own self-assessment, get your own report as to how you're doing against peers in your sector. One other thing I want to mention in terms of benchmarking is the opportunity to carry out your own personal benchmark. Earlier in the year, we soft launched something called MyProposal Coach. After detailed pilot testing, and I know some of you on the call were involved in that last year. MyProposal Coach is like an individual version of the proposal benchmarker. Instead of an organization being tested, it's a self-assessment of an individual's skills, depending on their core role, whether it's capture, bid, proposal, pitch, or whatever. It's already been used by over 100 people. The feedback so far has been great. They get a personal development report at the end of it that they can use to try and plot out, where do they want to go next in their self-development in their career. So again, that might be something that some of you individually or as teams want to look at. And as more data comes into that, clearly we store that in an anonymous way. We might be able to extract some trends and data to share in a future webinar like this. In conclusion, we could be here all night dicing the data from the proposal benchmarker. But I think we've probably spent long enough, right? Be in no doubt, the quality of your organization's approach to proposal development has a huge impact on your organization's win rates and future success. We have the data that backs that up. We have the information to show what the most successful teams do. We see which countries are succeeding. Big congratulations to the Netherlands. Which sectors are succeeding? Healthcare. And perhaps we've offered you a few things that might trigger debates within your organization about how you can move your proposal capabilities forward from wherever you are now. From being one of the best, how do we get even better? From struggling to trying to paint a picture with your senior execs of what this really could look like done well, and of the benefits that will result. So we're going to take some questions. Before I do so, I just want to give a hearty vote of thanks to Kira Gilson in our design team for all the graphics and animations and the spinning wheel of fortune there of the top 12 things that the most successful teams do compared to the least successful. So thank you, Kira, for that. Graham, have you had a chance to look while I've been wittering on at some of the questions coming in? And by the way, if you have other questions, feel free to add them in. We have just a few minutes left for questions.
Yeah, John, there was one in there on just looking for a bit of advice on competitive intelligence, because we mentioned that several times. Like, just how do you go about doing that? So I'll give my views, and then John, maybe you chip in. But I would say having somebody who's responsible for competitive intelligence in the first place is like a massive step forward to start with. So having somebody there to look after that aspect on your key competitors, or maybe, and then I think it's not rocket science. It's making sure your learning review process, which is an area that some of the best organizations get right, is capturing the right sort of competitive insight during that process. So you've got to gather the right information. You've got to be able to have a process to gather the information that's gained on each particular deal that you're working on as well, because you will get little snippets of information on your competitors on each of the deals you're working with. So there's sucking the information out of that sort of pipeline as well. And then there's looking at innovative ways to gather intelligence. So as well as your kind of desktop research and all of the stuff you'd imagine, in the APMP kind of best practice would talk about running a Teams call perhaps every few months, which the topic is, tell us about any particular interactions with a competitor, and then you just, it's an open invite, and you're just looking for people who have heard something, know something about, won work against a particular competitor. So there's thinking about all the different channels in which you can gather that intelligence, and then having the resource there to kind of own and manage and filter that information to make sure it's all valid and usable. So that would be my advice there. I don't know, John, do you have anything else?
Yeah, two little thoughts to add. Number one, go and talk to your C-suite. If you go and talk to the most senior execs in your organization, because of the roles they play in your organization and in your profession, your market more generally, and they will have an unrivaled set of information about what organizations are up to, and just spending 15 minutes with them once a quarter to download their latest view of what they see is absolutely fascinating. The second, I spent quite a lot of time with an organization called SCIP, Strategy and Competitive Intelligence Professionals, and they're interesting. They don't really get the bid world. It only sort of comes to tie in with our stuff when it gets to lessons learned or learning reviews. And they're slightly quirky. Most of them are former CIA or Mossad agents, but they're quite interesting to have a look at some of what they do and see what's relevant to our world. Graham, we've got some more questions out there?
Yeah, there was a question on how do you encourage your sales teams to go and get the pipeline of deals from their customers over the next 12 months? It was obviously around capacity planning and thinking about that, and maybe not getting information from sales teams on what deals are coming up when, and then the nightmare that can cause for bid teams. So just if we got any thoughts on that.
That's a hearts and minds exercise, isn't it? That's about talking to the sales team about the value that we can bring as bidding professionals to helping them win business, and about coaching them that's best done not when they arrive with an ITT in hand saying this has got to be submitted in 3 weeks. 3 weeks, you should be so lucky. But by talking about some of the things that can be done early and upfront to wire the process in our favour, some pre-proposal planning targets. Should you have sent a renewal proposal in? By the way, are there some markets where you could use perhaps challenger-style proactive proposals? So I think that's a kind of communication exercise and a championing good practice and a winning hearts and minds exercise. Should we take another couple, Graham, and then we'll have to
Yeah.
wrap up in the interest of time.
Yeah, sure. One here, just saying that their bid team, which is probably seen as a good positive thing, the bid team is getting more involved in that pre-work, some of the capture work out there, which feels like then they're sort of leading the capture process and into the bid process, and maybe that's kind of overlapping with sales a bit too much. It kind of feels like it's almost the wrong way round if bid is leading sales in the early stages of the process, which, you know, it's all about working as a team together. We've got different skill sets between sales and bid and proposal. So there are certain points in the overall sales cycle when it's natural for one of those functions to take the lead. So it does feel like it's asking a little bit much if you're expecting bid people to maybe start leading the sales process as well, unless you're...
Yeah, that's not our role, Graham, is it? I mean, there was a debate on this in LinkedIn the other day, and a couple of people I've seen on the call contributed to it, about how do you define the difference between a proposal manager and a bid manager. And I said, well, I take a very simplistic view. The proposal manager manages the proposal and the bid manager manages the bid. In other words, the overall arc of the campaign to try and capture the piece of business from capture onwards. But they have to align with the third role of sales lead or sales manager. And as BJ Lowney, our founder, talks about the three-headed monster: sales, bid, and proposal, and being very clear on the roles of those, and who does what and how we support one another, and making sure there are no gaps. But at the same time, making sure that we don't kind of start to do someone else's job to make their life easier because they're feeling a bit lazy. So there's some really clear dividers and definitions of some of those that have been around quite a long time, I think.
Yep. I think it's spot on. Nothing to add. Should we take a last one? So there's a question there around, is it ever okay to no bid to a major account? I guess meaning that you're the incumbent if you've only been considered in the bid last minute. And John, being, I know it's a long time ago, ex-procurement, what, you know, does that feel like there's some strange tactics going on if you're only invited
absolutely
last minute? Yeah.
If they've not been talking to you, they have been talking to someone else. This is their deal to win. We have something we share. I'm sure I'll happily send you a copy, Hazel, called The Pyramid of Renewal Doom. Or you'll probably find it sitting on one of our LinkedIn posts somewhere. Yeah, one of the big red flags for me that suggests you might no bid is if we'd known nothing about this before it arrives, but we believe they've been out there talking to other people. And if they're an existing major account, and they're not talking to you, then I'd wonder why that was, but it doesn't feel like your name's all over the bid.
Yeah.
Thank you for all those great questions. Thank you for attending. I know how busy we all are as a profession at the moment, so taking 45 minutes out to come to this has been, you know, we're grateful to you for doing that. We hope you've had some value from the session, and hope it gives you just a couple of ideas or just a couple of bits of evidence to go back into your organization and fight that continuing fight that we have as bid and proposal professionals, to get taken seriously by our organizations, to get taken ever more seriously, and to try and make people understand that what we do is so critical to the success of our organizations moving forward. So thank you so much, everybody, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.